So today I will be talking about the positive values of Hizmet and their role in creating a better society. The context of the presentation will be the relevant values and principles of Hizmet, because there is like three sets of values, what we're calling the religious ones, the tradition, historical ones, and the contextual ones. In my thesis, I have dedicated a big part of a chapter about that. And I will highlight some of them because of two reasons. One is we had a report about like 2 years ago about how to root out violent extremism, especially in ideological terms. So in here, we specifically highlighted some of the values that might actually help eradication of violent extremism itself, or the ones that claims from a Muslim Islamic background. So there'll be part of the context of values are chosen for that reason. So I can't really bring about all the principles, but I'll talk about the same philosophy that Kerim Balci has already mentioned and my friends paved the way. And I will keep in mind that since we have written this, the coup attempt and the aftermath has happened in Turkey as well. So, within this context, I will say a few words about why these values, like from a religious movement, why it can help to eradicate especially violent extremism, the ones that I'll talk. One of the reasons, because they are authentically Islamic. The justification comes from an Islamic authentic source, which makes very applicable for Muslims. So it is easier to deal with some of the violent extremist ideology with other authentic sources. The second is Hizmet has been always independent. I used to have difficulty to explain the Turkish government is not really, like supporting Hizmet activities in any way whatsoever. Now you have seen it for yourselves anyway. And the third one is, and that independence is very important. For instance, there is a lot of money spent on Quilliam Foundation in Britain, you would know, but they don't have much credibility on inside the mosques and inside the Muslim community. So that independence is important in here. And it is altruistic. People do this as their commitment to their society in their free time as a result of a social responsibility understanding. And it is positive and proactive. It is not trying to actually head on to do radicalization or something. It creates an alternative narrative which actually undermines itself, which I will explain some of them. So if we go to values and principles, one of them is love and compassion. So the Gülen formalizes this from the Quran as that the creation of the universe is about love and compassion. And when there is lack of them, is an opportunity for people to take part and bring the balance into equation. So there will be hunger, yes, and we are responsible to respond and restore that balance and everything. So love and compassion is the driving force of the universe in that sense as well. So when you think that is why the universe is created, not to actually punish and torment, but to actually present and let other people of free will observe and understand and apply their free will. So that is one thing. Second is the belief in diversity. So this is from the Quran, there is a direct quote for this, which says, had your Lord willed, all the people on earth would have believed. So can you, O Prophet, compel people to believe? And maybe you shouldn't. Because if Allah wanted us to be all Muslims, He would have made us Muslims. So it might seem, so what is the relevance? I'll try to put some relevance into it. Because the very idea of ISIS is to forcing people to either convert or die is against this. Allah doesn't want Muslims to convert every single person. According to Quran, if Allah wanted, He would have just done it. So the diversity is intended so that like thousands of diverse of ideas and colors can emerge. So this is one of the principles within Hizmet, is the diversity was intended by God. We are not here to actually make it one color, okay? And the free will, this is a very big part of my PhD thesis. The free will is essential human life. And belief in not negating free will is also essential in this way of understanding Islam. Why? Because God created us with a free will to do whatever we would like to do with them. And sometimes we may want to do really stupid things with our free will. But that is the whole point. We can choose freely up to a certain, and when you force somebody out of his free will, let's say in actual criticism, if you force people to shut their shops in a certain country in the prayer times, then there isn't actually a choice. It's a forceful prayer. If if you force people to become Muslims, there isn't a choice in there either. If you force people to anything else, there isn't a choice. So there is nothing that was intended in there. If there is something will come, and this comes with other stuff as well. You by committing yourself, for instance, secular education, you encourage people to be able to do more better informed decisions for themselves, so that they can really do their, exercise their free will. Because free will is not only, sometimes you don't have money, that's a lack of freedom, so you can't do certain stuff. That's, sometimes you don't, you have the freedom, but you don't do, or you have the money, but you don't do something. That's another manifestation of free will. So the free will is essential, I have stated a lot. So we shouldn't be forcing people to do what they don't want to do, let's say. The other principle is the middle path. This is not only what we're talking about, avoiding extremes. In Islam, it is mainly presented as Sirat al-Mustaqim, the middle path. Of course, all religions assume themselves as middle path, but this middle path is a bit more like, very interestingly, first time Muslim scholars has interpreted this in an Aristotelian way. A golden mean, like not coward, not extra brave, but the right amount in the right place. So, for instance, I'll tell you in Gülen's term, for instance, you may have envious about somebody else's belonging, his iPhone. So wanting that guy that shouldn't have that iPhone, which we called hasad, is a wrong use of that feeling. But that emotion is not a bad emotion because it drives us to work hard and get that thing for ourselves as well. But not having that emotion at all is a very pacifist. It would stop the development of full potential of humanity, what we can do in the world. So in a way, it is good to have an envy, not envy, envy is not, it is good to have a gıpta in the original term, that we should look up other people and try to acquire those qualities and possessions for ourselves as well. So it will, sustain and it will help us our development. So in that sense, middle path is to use the emotions in the right place. I would like to answer the questions if needed in detail. So this is the other thing. Gülen teaches about a self-reflexivity. You can't be absolutist about. Your religion can be absolutely true, but your understanding of that religion can't be absolutely true. So you can't kill people just because they don't fit in your definition of religion. So if you apply this to Christianity, you can't actually judge people because they don't exactly understand God the way you understand them. So same as Muslims. So you can't be absolutist in terms of judging other people because your understanding of absoluteness or God would be always limited and faulty. And there should be a room for that not to make, let's say, capital punishment on that sense, let's say. So the other principle is positive action. For Gülen, everything we do should bring something positive. Before we destroy something, well, first of all, we shouldn't be destroying anything, and we should always consider, before we make an action, it should always have a calculation of, okay, what will this achieve? How it will contribute to the situation? Will this make it better in any way? Or will this make it worse? So if an action is not going to make something better, then it is not musbet hareket. It's not a positive contribution to the situation. So maybe we should avoid and find a way to make a positive contribution to the problems. And I have taken out, probably because I can't see the time as well. I'm rushing for no reason. So in relation to this, there was another principle I take out. For instance, we are responsible to portray and to exemplify best of our behaviors, but we are not actually responsible to get an outcome. So we may not be able to sort out all the problems in the world, but we are responsible to try to solve them and contribute positively. And also remember that, like some problems are bigger than us, so we can only do a contribution and some other people will do more contribution and eventually we'll solve up. Think about like Palestinian issue, for instance. We may not be able to see the solution for that one state, two state or whatever, but we can always contribute something positively so that eventually in some time it resolves. So I've chosen the hardest example. So the other thing is positive thinking about other people or positive assumption. Not to start up with a negative assumption. This is something that you need to train yourself. You may not want to rely on people's positive intuitions or positive, by your assuming them as positive, but you may always have to train yourself that everybody means well, simply. So that helps you engage easier. If if you think that when people see each other on the street, they don't know anything about each other, so if their assumption about each other is positive, they engage. If their assumption is about negative, they hide their bags and they try to look out for themselves. So we have to increase that positivity in terms of engaging with each other. So this is redefining Dar al-Harb. Dar al-Harb is very much about extremist or violent extremism. Dar al-Harb is the place of war. So in traditional Islam, there was a couple of definitions that defines where Muslims are obliged to pray and where they are not necessarily have to pray. For instance, if you are in a Darul Islam, in a land of peace, where your religion is not persecuted, which wasn't the case in the beginning of Islam, then you should do all your prescribed prayers and everything, because there is no persecution about Islam. But if you're in a Darul Harb, what means if your religion is persecuted in a certain community, you are allowed to hide, or maybe miss the prayers or don't pray the Jummah prayers and this and that. But there was other, concepts, for instance, Darul Aman. Well, you might have a certain confrontation with a rival state in Middle Ages, but there is an agreement between you, so there is a certain amount of freedom, but not enough to allow you to let's say, perform the Eid celebration, but everything else is fine, sort of, yeah? So then you can apply that much. That's called Darul Aman. But over the time, it all fade away and it become black and white. The way ISIS narrative is, this is Muslim land, you should come here, and the other is non-Muslim land, Darul Harb, so you should harm them as much as you can. Sort of. Gülen actually redefines these concepts without denying the existence of this. Yes, there might be certain places like in Burma, there is a persecution of Muslims, so they can actually, maybe they're not responsible to pay zakat or do their Jummah prayers because there is a religious persecution in there. So, but apart from that, Gülen comes up with the definition of Darul Hizmet. The world is an arena, is a place for us to serve. And there is nothing that actually tarnishes that or nobody holds you back. If you want to talk to people, if you want to open schools, if you want to help people, do charity, nobody holds you back. So there is nothing which holds you that doing all those good deeds that you can do. So the Darul Hizmet concept looks the world from a different angle, says the whole world is a playground, I would say, but is our area to serve. So in that sense, it takes away from that dichotomous understanding. It is either black or white, because that is very stupid, but it's not the topic anyway. Well, sorry, the way it has been interpreted by ISIL at the moment is very stupid, but it is not the topic at the moment. So nonviolent activism, that is one very important criteria, because from our point of view, we always learn that there is a defensive war, jihad, and this and that. But Gülen has taught us the way to organize ourselves in a non-violent manner. Actually, in that case, if you have to resort violence, that is inhumane, because you couldn't find a humane way of solving that problem, because humans are supposed to talk and sort out their problems, or show respect and part their ways and whatever, but not necessarily resort to violence. And that works for the family, that works for the community, domestic violence, this and that. So if a person is not humane enough, if he can't develop his humanity, he would resort to violence. So non-violent activism, whatever you do, it may take 10 years, you always have to remain in a non-violent, unless, like, if you're like really protecting yourself, like these court cases where you just save your life. Even in that case, there is an example where he quotes from the Prophet, peace be upon him, that two Sahabe were the two friends of the Prophet were scared of a snake, and they, first run away, then start chasing the snake, and the snake run away into a hole. And the Prophet said that is the perfect solution. So now you're both saved from each other's harm. So, the snake has a life to live, you have a life to live. The best thing is that, it's in the hole and you didn't manage to kill that. That is the best solution. So non-violent activism is important, so avoid from the harm. That's the respect for the law of the land. That is another thing that Gulen emphasizes. For that reason, all the schools that Gulen has inspired actually follows the regulations of the land that they operate. If it is in Africa, in Turkey, the only thing is they still, for instance, whether they require it or not, for instance, there was a school in Bradford, and the Muslim community wanted that to become a Muslim school, and the head teachers and others decided, no, we want to remain as a secular alternative. But eventually they had to close down because nobody sent children because it was a Muslim populated area. But yes, there was a lot of Muslim schools in there, but there wasn't a Muslim secular school, let's say. So, but it remains in that sense, although the law of this land, Britain, allows faith school, that's another signature of the movement to dedicate education in a more secular fashion. So this is the last one. I think to pursue the legitimate ends with legitimate means. A Muslim cannot go out of his way for illegitimate means to even achieve a legitimate. You can't go to heaven by killing people, because killing people is forbidden. So you can't achieve something great with an illegitimate mean. So that is, like whatever you try to do, you always have to remain, let's say, legitimate. And I said 19 minutes, that's not too bad. Thank you very much for listening.